The fallout from that moment did not erupt all at once. It spread, slowly but relentlessly, through every corner of the Forrester world like a fracture running beneath the surface of something that once felt unbreakable. What had happened in that living room was not just a shocking decision or an impulsive act. It was a shift in the balance of everything they believed about loyalty, family, and love. And as the hours passed, each person began to process that shift in their own way, pulling further away from one another, even as they were bound more tightly together by the consequences. Brooke, standing in the same room where she had just exchanged vows, felt the weight of her choice settle over her in waves that grew heavier with each passing moment. The brief sense of clarity that had guided her decision, the feeling of being seen, understood, chosen, began to fade, replaced by something far more complicated. She had not expected the silence to feel like this. She had not expected the absence of Ridge's presence, his anger, his voice, to echo louder than any argument ever had. There was no immediate regret, not yet, but there was an awareness creeping in, a recognition that what she had done could not be undone, and that the consequences would not simply resolve themselves with time. Eric, meanwhile, carried himself with a quiet resolve that bordered on defiance. For him, the decision still made sense. He believed in what he had done, believed that what he and Brooke had found in that moment was real, even if it had been born out of vulnerability. But beneath that certainty was something he refused to acknowledge fully, a flicker of doubt that surfaced whenever he thought of Donna's face, of the way her expression had broken not with anger, but with disbelief. He had not meant to hurt her. He had not set out to replace her. The idea of walking away, of physically separating herself from the life she had built, felt too final, too irreversible. Instead, she remained within those familiar walls, moving through them like a ghost of herself, each room a reminder of something that had once been hers. Her grief did not come in dramatic outbursts. It came in quiet, uncontrollable moments, when she passed by a chair Eric used to sit in, when she saw objects that held memories she could not erase, when she realized that everything around her had stayed the same, but her place within it had been erased. Ridge, unlike Donna, did not allow himself the luxury of quiet grief. His anger remained sharp, focused, directed not just at Brooke and Eric, but at the situation itself, at the disruption of something he believed should have remained intact. To him, this was not just a betrayal, it was a distortion of everything the Forrester family represented. And what made it worse was the certainty that neither Brooke nor Eric fully understood the magnitude of what they had done. He began to move with purpose, his thoughts no longer scattered between confusion and disbelief, but aligned toward a single objective. This marriage would not last. It could not last, and he would make sure of it. Donna, in her pain, found herself drawn toward that same purpose, not out of anger, but out of a desperate need to reclaim something she felt had been taken from her without warning. When she and Ridge finally spoke again, there was no hesitation in their alignment. They did not need to convince each other. The understanding was immediate, almost instinctive. They would not accept this outcome, and they would not stand by and watch it solidify into something permanent. Meanwhile, the tension within the Forrester mansion continued to shift, settling into something quieter but no less volatile. Brooke and Eric attempted to move forward, to establish a sense of normalcy within their new reality, but the foundation they had built was already beginning to show signs of strain. It was not that they doubted each other, not yet. It was that the world around them refused to remain still long enough for them to believe in what they had created. Every glance from others carried judgment. Every silence held unspoken questions. Every interaction felt slightly altered, as though the entire dynamic of the family had been recalibrated around this one decision. And then, slowly, the cracks began to appear. It started with small things, moments of hesitation, subtle shifts in tone, questions left unanswered. Brooke began to notice the way Eric would drift into thought, his attention pulling away from her in ways that reminded her, painfully, of what she had experienced with Ridge. It was not the same, not exactly, but it was enough to trigger something within her, a quiet fear that she had stepped into something that might not hold the stability she had been seeking. Eric, on the other hand, began to feel the pressure of what he had chosen more acutely. The initial clarity that had guided him was now complicated by the reactions of those around him, by the undeniable truth that this marriage had not only changed his life, but disrupted the lives of everyone connected to him. He still believed in the decision, but belief alone was no longer enough to shield him from the reality of its consequences. The confrontation that followed days later did not come as a surprise. Ridge entered the mansion with a purpose that was impossible to ignore, Donna close behind him, her presence quieter but no less resolute. They did not come to argue aimlessly. The accusations, the challenges, the insistence that this marriage was built on instability rather than love, it had all been said before. But this time it was different. This time, it was not just an emotional reaction. It was a calculated effort to break something apart. Ridge spoke of patterns, of how Brooke and Eric had both turned to each other not out of genuine connection, but out of a need to fill something missing. He questioned whether what they felt was real or simply a reflection of their own loneliness, their own fear of being alone. Donna, through her pain, echoed that sentiment, not with anger, but with a quiet certainty that what they had was not sustainable. And for the first time, their words did not simply clash against resistance. They lingered. Brooke felt it first, the shift in her own certainty, the subtle intrusion of doubt into a decision she had made so quickly. She had believed, in that moment, that she was choosing something real, something meaningful. But now, confronted with the possibility that it had been something else, something less stable, she found herself questioning not just the future, but the very foundation of what she had agreed to. Eric sensed it as well, though he resisted it more strongly. He refused to let Ridge's perspective define his reality, refused to accept that what he had found with Brooke was merely a response to loneliness. The room fell into a tense silence once the confrontation reached its peak, each person standing within their own version of the truth, each one unwilling to fully concede, yet no longer as certain as they had been before. Ridge and Donna did not need to say anything more. They had planted the seed, and they knew it would grow. As they left, their shared glance carried a quiet confidence, a belief that they had set something in motion that could not be easily undone. They were not relying on force. They were relying on time, on doubt, on a natural unraveling of something that had not been given the chance to truly take root. Behind them, Brooke and Eric remained, standing in the aftermath of a confrontation that had not destroyed their marriage, but had altered it in a way that could not be ignored. The silence between them felt different now, heavier, more uncertain. And as Brooke looked at Eric, searching for the same clarity she had felt when she said yes, she realized something that unsettled her more than anything Ridge had said. That clarity was no longer there. In its place was something far more complicated, something fragile, something that might not survive what was coming next.